As the story goes, it all began with an empty whiskey bottle. After a fruitless search for oil, 3 Pennsylvania men decided to drill one last well and pick its location with the toss of a bottle. What they hit was one of the state's largest oil fields. Hi, I'm Jim Wilhelm. In 1906, that discovery led to the beginning of an oil boom in Crawford County. Today, the industry that sprang from that well is remembered here at the Illinois Oilfield Museum in Oblong, which is not far from where that first well gushed. Inside, among the tools and displays, are signs from companies once located here, including Mahusky. It was founded by those men from Pennsylvania, and we're told the name is an old Indian term meaning more money. Sometimes to get that money, these canisters were used. They were filled with nitroglycerin and lowered down the well bore. Then the nitroglycerin was detonated by dropping a go-devil down the well bore. The resulting explosion would create an underground cavern into which the oil would flow. Once oil was hit, to keep it flowing, pumps were placed at the bottom of the well bores. They were connected to the surface by a drill string, a series of connecting pipes which at that time were made of wood. It's interesting to note that petroleum, which fuels our modern age, was once delivered by horse-drawn wagons. Oh, and another whiskey connection. Oil is sold by the barrel because in the mid-1800s it was stored in wooden whiskey barrels, which was the only thing available at the time. Outside, the museum is surrounded by larger pieces, including another horse-drawn wagon. This one is a pulling unit. Occasionally the pump at the bottom of the well would fail, and that's when this wagon was used. Once in position, the pulling unit was stood straight up, creating an instant block and tackle form. Then a cable was strung through the pulley at the top, and horses were used to pull up the entire drill line and the old pump. It was a tough job back then working in oil. Thousands had flooded the area seeking employment and instant wealth. There were no unions, pay was minimal, and in the days of horses, most of the work was done by hand. Pipeline ditches were dug manually, and it took 3 men constantly turning these large tongs to screw one section of pipe into the connecting collar. Meanwhile, in the field, more wells were being drilled and more pumps were being set to work. It was near here in 1906 that one of the largest oil fields in the state was discovered. That first well came in at 1,500 barrels a day, making Illinois one of the largest oil-producing states. That title has passed, but the oil field is still producing, as evidenced by the numerous pumps dotting the landscape. Today, pumps are powered by electric motors, but at the turn of the century they used a combination of old and new technology. Back then, each pump was connected by steel rod lines to a large wheel, which was turned by a single engine. And this is one of those units. In addition to the oil, most wells also produce some natural gas, and that gas was used to power some of these engines. And each one of them has a barker on the exhaust, which gives off a loud noise ever so often. And that's so that they can monitor the engine from afar. This unit has been in continuous operation since 1909, and like the model we saw in the museum, it too turns a large wheel, which moves the rod lines back and forth, which operates the pumps. A lot of folks who grew up in this area remember going to sleep with those barkers coughing all night long. If anything should happen to the engine, the silence was enough to wake the foreman. And the rod lines run more than pumps. Some inventive person designed this wooden box that could be hooked to a line, which then would rock it back and forth, and it became a clothes washer. Soon the museum hopes to relocate to a larger facility, and they have plans to reconstruct a wooden oil derrick over the first well that started the boom. For directions to or for times the museums are open, call 618-544-3087.